As the world ushers in the new year, many issues are front and center in people's minds. From the 2020 U.S. presidential election, Brexit, the ongoing turmoil in Hong Kong, to global action on climate change. For a preview of issues that are expected to dominate year 2020, here's our Yoon Jung-min.
One issue will undoubtedly dominate the headlines in the U.S. this year, the 2020 presidential election. President Trump, who's seeking re-election in November, will hold his first campaign rally of the new year in Ohio on January 9th. President Trump was impeached by the House of Representatives in December, but the House has been holding off on sending the articles of impeachment to the Republican-controlled Senate, claiming it would be an unfair trial. Even before the House voted, numerous senior Republicans said Trump's impeachment would be dead on arrival in the Senate.
So I think this exercise in the House is beginning to weaponize impeachment. When it gets here, my goal is to have as short a trial as possible.
While some say the impeachment will damage Trump's reputation, others argue it will have little impact or might even strengthen President Trump's re-election chances as the articles won't pass the Senate. On the Democratic side, the frontrunners are former Vice President Joe Biden, Senators Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, Mayor Pete Buttigieg of South Bend, Indiana, and former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg. In a recent poll by Reuters conducted between December 18th and 19th, Biden, Sanders, and Warren were the top three aiming to topple Trump in November. Democrats will hold their first caucus in Iowa on February 3rd. In the UK, Brexit is set to happen by the January 31st deadline, led by Prime Minister Boris Johnson and his Conservative Party, which now holds a solid majority in the House of Commons following the recent snap election. From this year, Johnson aims to build a new relationship between Britain and the European Union.
And it paves the way for a new agreement on our future relationship with our European neighbours based on an ambitious free trade agreement, with no alignment, with no alignment on EU rules, but instead control of our own laws.
Even if the UK leaves the bloc this month, there wouldn't be a dramatic change right away because the UK and Brussels will go through a transition period until the end of 2020. Throughout the year, they will be negotiating a comprehensive trade deal. However, many experts say it will be very challenging to meet the tight timetable. In Hong Kong, demonstrators say they won't stop their protests until Chief Executive Carrie Lam accepts all of their 5 demands, including free and democratic elections. What's waiting for Hong Kong this year is a legislative election in September, which is likely to be affected by the protests if the situation doesn't improve. Eyes are on whether China will actively intervene as Beijing has been pushing Hong Kong to enact national security law to crack down on the protesters. In November, world leaders will gather at the COP26 in Glasgow in a bid to narrow the gap on tackling climate change. At last year's UN climate talks, countries couldn't agree on details of how they're going to cut carbon emissions. In June, the P4G summit will be held in Seoul, where global leaders and climate activists will gather to discuss green growth. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.